that B is already with us, and that's great news. Good morning, B. It's always good to be with you, and I can't wait this morning. The screen share is open, B, and if you want to use that. We're going to wait about 5 minutes, take some announcements, and that'll just give people a few more minutes to get into the Zoom room. As many of you know, a couple weeks ago, actually, it was the beginning of October, there was a partnership with Texas Impact to run some online orientations on, what could we be about on the day after the election on November the 6th. And there has kind of been a local reprisal of that. And I'll be sending out more information today, but it looks like I will be doing a few more of those orientations. There will be, well, anyone could join in, but I'm sending it out more within San Antonio. And we may be having a central gathering on Main Plaza on the day after the election. It's all coming together rather quickly and out of the mayor's suggestion that it might be good to gather as the larger community as well. So I'm going to be sending that information out probably yet today. I was hoping to have it this morning, but I don't. It's having to go through some, approval processes. After all, I do work for the government. So anyway, that will be coming, and I really encourage you to also encourage others, but yourself and others, your networks, to come and at least be thinking about who we are and how we are with each other and with ourselves the day after our election is November 5th. I did kind of a mini crash orientation, if you recall, at the beginning of October at the intersection. So it will be, those orientations will be that only. They'll be like an hour long, and we'll work through it together much faster than our crash course in 15 minutes in early October. So, are there other announcements of things that are happening, movement ahead? We've had a busy October. It's always busy. It's, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, just so many things going on. It might be kind of nice to have a little bit quieter, although how can it be quieter, right, with the election? But maybe people are doing quieter, right? And I'm going to cough here. I'm so sorry. Okay, B, you got us on like a really quiet morning. I don't know what this is about. Normally there's this, that, and 1,000 other things that are happening out there.
Hey,
That
Ann,
is,
I've got one.
Okay, here comes
So
Bill.
here's comes
Come on.
Bill. Bill will always say something to fill a void. So the Sacred does regular training sessions on our platform. We call it Sacred 101. And we do those on Zoom once a month for anybody that wants one. So we have one coming up on October 30th. So I'll post a link in the chat. So if you have yourself or you have members of your team or anybody that you know that would want to spend about 40 minutes going through all things sacred, then sign up and jump in.
what is sacred?
Sacred is a free online directory of all the human services in Greater San Antonio.
Oh,
So
nice.
if you were looking for a food pantry close to your house or a place to get eyeglasses or dental care or help with housing related services or mental health, you can use Sacred to find answers to all of those things.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it's also done by zip code, B. So there's a map, and so you can get what's closest to you. And it also helps us do like gap analysis. So where
Right.
there's codes when things are missing, but it's very granular in terms of as many congregations as well as we can get in there, even small ones. Some of the larger directories, you have to be a certain size and service, but we try to get all of them in there. So, a congregation may only be able to help one or two families. in their area, but that would help those 1 to 2 folks. So, and it's been growing across Texas. You probably, both of you would benefit from a conversation together, Bill and B. But we
I
have
think
found
that's
you,
right.
we have found, B, just so you know, when you get several people together and their names all start with the letter B, big things happen. So just be careful when the two of you meet. So I'm going to turn it over to B now. She's the executive director of Texas Impact. And I found out that, like, B not knowing about Sacred, there are people who don't know about Texas Impact in San Antonio. And that's just a shame within our faith community. So we're going to need to do more about that in terms of having people know. I'm getting some feedback. I'm trying to work on it here. I think we got it. All right. So B, I'm going to hand it over to you. B and I have known each other for, we're not going to tell you how long, but a while, but a
Minute.
while. And
Yeah.
and I miss when we're not working together, and I just get so excited when we are working together. So, and reconnecting. So welcome this morning, B, and it's all yours.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, I guess could we start by show of hands? Could people show if you know what Texas Impact is, whether it's a little bit or a lot, if you can just do your emoji thing or whatever you call it, and so I get some sense. So some people, okay, all right, cool. Because most people did not seem to be completely convinced that you know what Texas Impact is, I'm going to go ahead and play a short video, which I hope is not tedious of me first thing in the morning. The music is a little bit perky, so I promise that will be tedious. But this is just, I think, a pretty quick way to explain what exactly it is that we do. So I'm going to share and see if I can find the place where I have the video pulled up.
Yeah, that's
Um,
always
I know it's
there
okay.
you
All
go.
right. I
Okay.
feel good. I feel good about this. All right. Here we go.
I'm not hearing sound, but that might be
Oh
me.
no, hold on. You're not getting sound?
I'm not.
Okay. Hold on a second. I think right. So give me
It could have,
one.
you might have to stop
Give
sharing
me
and go
one.
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, can you hang on a second?
There it is. Now you might want to start. I
Okay.
heard that.
So you can hear me now.
Uh-huh. So
All
you
right.
might want, there you
Yep. I'm
go.
going to start over. It's not very long. Okay. Here we go.
Impact is about putting faith into action. We connect values and beliefs to civic engagement and advocacy.
The Jewish tradition is founded on the words of Torah, the words that tell us to love our neighbor as ourselves, to not stand idly by, to pursue justice, to protect the vulnerable amongst us.
Abundant life means that one should have a full, healthy, whole life when it comes to expressing their voice, when it comes to their safety in a community, regardless of their citizenship, when it comes to access to healthcare and so on and so forth.
Why should people of faith engage in public policy? Childhood poverty, predatory lending, unpaid sick time, hunger, lack of access to healthcare, mass incarceration, dysfunctional public education system, racism, patriarchy, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, and Afrophobia are just some of the reasons why we must be unapologetically and unashamedly stand with power and authority in the public square.
There's a core of faith traditions that can come together around mutual values of loving your neighbor, mutual values of the respect and dignity of all people, mutual values of a participatory government. That when we can agree on those kinds of values, then we can come together to put those values into action. Texas Impact is really great at claiming those shared values and then educating people about how the laws that are being made or the laws that are existing either meet those values or run counter to those values. We equip faith leaders and their congregations with information and opportunities to engage with policymakers. We don't have any trouble convincing folks at First Church to care about the political issues or to see that they are connected to our faith. But what we need is to help people understand what the issues are and what they can do and how to do it.
There's a lot of information and there's a lot of bad information out there and disinformation and misinformation, as we've seen over and over again on social media. And so having a trusted organization like Texas Impact to be able to turn to say, these are the things that we know we can trust, and then we can then take that message and take it out to our people and our constituents and our friends and our neighbors.
For a pastor who's nervous about finding how to engage their congregation in public witness, I think that's so understandable. These are tough times to find ways to be involved in the political process with people who have a variety of opinions and political persuasions. I would say find the place to start. Texas Impact does such a great job of bringing people together across political lines on issues that people of faith care about and can unite over.
More Texans of faith are feeling called to step up and speak out. Are you one of them? Our mission is to support your work. I hope you'll join us. So hopefully that was a decent introduction to what we do. We work on public policy. Mostly, or at least a majority share of the work that we do has to do with state public policy. We do a lot with the Texas legislature, but not exclusively. So we do work periodically on federal issues, especially when there's a clear connection to Texas. So you would find us a lot on federal climate policy and federal immigration policy, two issues where Texas sort of sits in a uniquely important position and we're uniquely impacted. And we do increasingly find that we are not so much getting involved in local advocacy. So like we're not so much doing, we're not doing work around ordinances or local elections. Certainly we don't really have much to do with, as much as we are helping people, one, find the ways to connect with groups who do that local stuff, and two, see how the local situations move, I want to say like up the food chain into the state and federal levels. And I would say, if I had to pick one thing that I think is the most important takeaway that I wish every faith community in Texas and in the United States would really lean into for the remainder of 2024 and certainly in 2025 and beyond, it is that the local experience that faith communities bring, because they are serving people who are clients of or left behind by or victims of policies that happen at a higher level, people in those faith communities are often the very best position in the community to explain the connection between what's happening to people and the policies that exist at these higher levels. And I'll give you a really good example, and I'm going to I really do, Bill, I do want to talk to you, and I want to give you a really specific case. So you all, I'm going to assume that you probably mostly are aware of this, that in Texas, we have hundreds of thousands of children who are eligible currently for SNAP and Medicaid, but are not enrolled in those programs. And the reasons that they're not enrolled are multifactorial. Some of them are in mixed status families where the adult caregivers in the family are reticent to step forward because even though the kid would be eligible, they're worried about what's going to happen to them or other members of the extended family who are undocumented. In some cases, they have other things in their lives. So they may have a family violence situation. They may have a mental health situation. They may have an issue about homelessness that would impact child custody. There are any number of things where the family has reasons that they don't step into the space. But the most common reason is they don't know. They haven't been told. They don't have access to the information. And if they do, it's very challenging to apply for the programs. I mean, it's a good exercise for people to go through the applications for Medicaid and SNAP, especially for Medicaid. The system is, I will stop short of saying purposely, maliciously designed to keep people out, but it is certainly not designed to assume the best. It is not designed to expect that most people who apply or all people who apply probably have a real need for the program. And in most cases, probably there's a way to get them in. It's not like that. So through the magic of the internet and all of the different data sources that exist several years ago, even, and we could do this more granularly today than we could then, Texas Impact was able to put together a zip code level map that showed where there in the whole state of Texas for every zip code, where there were likely to be children in households where the children good bet that they are eligible for Medicaid and SNAP, where the population in that zip code area that was currently receiving those services was lower than the total number that seemed like it ought to be eligible. Does that make sense? I said that in the most arcane possible way I could have, I realized. But it's not possible to know how home address by home address. There are 3 children in that house across the street who ought to be on Medicaid who aren't, right? We can't do that without actually going out and canvassing. But we can get a pretty good, we can get down to the level of in this zip code, there's probably 400 children who ought to be on Medicaid who aren't. And we know that because we know from census data and other data, there are a lot of kids in this neighborhood. A lot of them are not on Medicaid, but the income and household data about the neighborhood would suggest that probably most of them ought to be. Well, if we know that that's true, then we could target zip code levels, right? And we could say congregation who is in zip code X, or congregation more likely, honestly, congregation that wants to partner with the ones that are in zip code X. Here's what we need. We need volunteers, or, we need people to once a week, all day long, post up at this location, or we need events that happen once a month around the zip code area. And I provided public testimony about this a couple of years ago. The legislature is forever sort of in a battle of wills with the state agency that runs the Medicaid program over whose fault it is that children aren't on Medicaid who should be. And we said, in my testimony, I said, given that this is such easy data to come by, I mean, I had a graduate student run the data for me. What if every legislator in the state committed that their plan was going to be to help faith-based and community-based organizations in their own district get the kids in that district enrolled in Medicaid and SNAP? And I was met with a lot of people needed to get a cup of coffee right about that. Gosh, my goodness, look at the time. Well, we have not had any major effort by legislative offices to take us up on that. But in San Antonio, your legislative delegation would be a prime example of people who would care about that, could care about that, and they would need you to work with them. It's not something legislative offices can do on their own. So I know I've been talking for longer than I was supposed to in the first place, but I'll stop and ask, does that sound like something that you all would be interested in? I'll go back to state policy maybe if you want me to, but does that idea sound manageable?
Well, one of the one of the first things that comes to mind during this election season are how many canvassers we do have. And those poor people, I'm going to be really tongue in cheek here, but they won't have a thing to do after November 5th. And, why not
Sure.
enlist their aid? It also makes me think of coming up. We've kind of got a growing campaign, grassroots really, but about neighbor. And maybe even coming up with a neighbor to neighbor portion of it, where neighbors go door to door. I mean, just think about the League of Women Voters.
Sure.
If that kind of door to door and everywhere they went was also about feeding our children at the same time, I mean, talk about how would that change who we are if more children were fed. That is what we talk about, a compassion act, that it just will tip so many other things into being.
And so that's a perfect segue to, so there's not San Antonio and the congregations in San Antonio cannot by yourselves make there be a compassion act for the state of Texas. But by doing the work that you do locally, and especially like leaning into the stuff Ann is talking about and the stuff that you guys already do, I mean, you really are. We definitely have had people in other cities who are saying, now, what are they doing in San Antonio again? So you're modeling a lot of good stuff, but you are in a position to tell policymakers, here's what we're doing and here's what the impacts of it are. And here's what we're seeing in our local community. This is the reason that we have poverty. This is the reason that children are not being fed. This is the reason that people are not getting health care as best we can see. And here are the programs and the barriers to participation in the programs. So you guys just have unique knowledge. So Texas Impact, I say sometimes Texas Impact doesn't help anybody, right? We don't provide any meals to anybody. We don't provide any shots to any children, none of those things. What we do is put people together. We bring people who do have direct experience in local communities in 254 counties into conversation with lawmakers, hoping that those conversations are significant drivers of public policy for two reasons. One, because you have unique understanding, and two, because you're voters. So congregations as bodies don't vote, but all the members of them hopefully do. So we are working hard on making sure that congregations understand that mobilizing people to vote is not a separate partisan activity that's different from all the work that you do to serve people. It's just an extension of the way that we use our voices to share our knowledge with the wider community. And I know there was a comment in the chat. It says regulations in place if someone wants to act as a navigator and help people. So there is a program. So being a navigator navigator is such a frustrating term because the Affordable Care Act kind of hijacked it when we were using it as a much more generic term. So there are navigators who work specifically in the marketplace, but in a more general sense, there are navigators who just help people sign up for benefits. There's no regulation that you can't do that. There's, I mean, your congregation can say you're welcome to help people, but there are ways that you can do it that are particularly effective. There is a program that Texas Impact actually was the originator of the legislation, and we helped put the program in place called Community Partners. And that is a program where congregations and faith-based ministries can partner with the state much more intentionally. So you get specific tools and get training on all the online systems so that you're more equipped, I guess. Like it's not just like you're helping your aunt fill out her Medicare form, you're helping people you don't know who have complex situations in a way that is robust, where they won't say later, I don't know, that person at that church gave me a bum steer, right? So that program has been in decline for a few years. There is a big effort on the part of, I would say, the Austin social service advocacy community, the Austin-based advocates, to get the state to put resources back into the community partner program. And if that's something that sounds like a thing you all wish were a robust thing you could participate in, I would love to talk to you about that legislation.
So we can talk about that. I have one last question. I hope you can stay on for about 15 minutes, but we usually pause about 8:30. So we try to make the commitment to get all the big information. So one last question during this before 8:30. I do know that other cities have like a Texas Impact they're kind of organized that way, and they have, like a point of contact. Does San Antonio have anything like that?
It's an interesting question. So yes, it's you, but also, so in Houston and Dallas currently we have, they're not sort of institutions. It's more like clubs, I guess, or task forces, maybe is even a better term, that are where people who are, we would say, like Texas Impact frequent flyers and hardcore participants, groupies, do collaborative projects. And they are called Houston Faith Votes and North Texas Faith Votes. We had a meeting this week on Monday. One of my staff members had a meeting with a few people who had attended the Interfaith Welcome Coalition's 10th anniversary Palooza that we had a few weeks ago, and about starting San Antonio Faith Votes. There's definitely interest in having such a thing. And if you are interested in being part of that conversation, just feel free to reach out to me or tell Ann and she'll put us in touch. But yeah, I think there's definitely a goal of making that happen sort of going into 2025.
And with our very active Cops Metro, I mean, we should be able to do that rather easily and with no impact.
Yeah, and I will just say we have done some work with Cops Metro, most particularly around the ending gun violence, where we've got a robust partnership going on.
So it's 8:29. Don't go anywhere, B.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here.
For those who might need to leave, should move on with their day. We're so glad you came. Within our, I'm really sorry about my allergies today, but within our Be the Neighbor series that we've been running for quite a while on all of our collaborations, next week we're going to start a 3-part mini-series. I'm starting to sound like television, right? 3-part mini-series on the environment. And so we'll be getting an update. I'm going to have to quit talking. We're going to be getting an update on our citywide sustainability plan. We're going to be getting, it was really exciting this year, but the city opened up some small grants that didn't have to go through city council, and they were like up to $25,000. And we had congregations and stuff apply, and not only apply for the funds, but they applied the funds in environmental ways. So we're going to hear some of those. I think it's one of the most innovative things that the city has come up with are these smaller $5,000 to $25,000 grants. And to even say that it's smaller, I know for congregations, that's not necessarily small. You can do a lot with $5,000 to $25,000. And those were turned around quickly. The grant application was short and easy, and they worked with people to make them the best they could be. It's really, I can't wait for our next series. I think it's really great. Most of our work, because of lots of different reasons, and we could have a whole session on that, but the work that we've been doing with the city and through my office has been connected to as part of the Department of Human Services.
Mhm.
So it's directly connected to the senior centers, Head Starts, to that kind of direct service, what's called direct service on the ground, food security, housing. Absolutely good. I think it's well placed within our city structure. And it's well placed too, I think, for our different faith traditions and religion. It's a really great place to meet in that kind of space where we're serving together and we learn about each other. And we also have such, strong advocacy like Cops Metro, also afoot in our city. And we do as well, like what we're doing today, we do connect people with advocacy efforts, but it does keep us rooted and on the ground, right? And so we're kind of limited a little bit in that direction, but we do make connections with advocacy so people of faith can really be engaged. And I think probably one of the benefits of this election that we're in, and benefits, okay, everybody's ears should perk up, right? There's a benefit, right? But it really, I think, has raised the level of people's awareness, at least opened their ears a little bit more about what we could be doing, what we are doing, what the possibilities are. I love the example that you gave this morning. The one thing I've learned a lot, but one thing that I've learned early on in this position, and B, I'm sure you know this, but that there are faith liaisons in the federal level. And I have learned so much from those folks because they spend a lot of time finding out what's going on right out in the country. And I don't mean necessarily rural areas, but across the US. Anyway, I had asked early on with one of those folks, what are the faith initiatives happening across the country that have the greatest impact? And is there common denominators in those? And we've been practicing it ever since we heard it. And so the comment back it was easy, and there were two parts. One, that faith efforts that are in geographic proximity to the need have the greatest impact. So we have been working on forming cohorts and collaborations of congregations that are many different expressions, but in a very localized geographic area, working on those needs. The second part that I learned was that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the faith initiatives that work at the bottom at that pyramid first, so that's food and housing and safety and security and identity, have the most impact. So the example you gave us this morning is brilliant. I mean, it's just brilliant. I mean, you've just opened up my head and I'm like swimming in it. But working at the feeding of the children, And then what happens because of these two elements of impact, community starts to form and take shape and become stronger together. And then all those other things that go higher up on Maslow's hierarchy start to heal themselves within the community. So I don't really have a question. I just am affirming your brilliant idea, but affirming how we have been moving, but what we've been doing in San Antonio. And if they all pick that up, I mean, imagine what could happen.
I think it would be really, so we've met with Diego Bernal, of course, a lot, and we've met with some of the other members from San Antonio, and they have all been interested in the idea that there are children in their in their district who should be getting services who are not. they themselves, legislators, have very small staffs. They are doing a lot. They have a lot of competing interests. And when we said, there are faith communities who could help you, this is true of individual people who are overwhelmed. Someone can say to the person who is in the middle of whatever the overwhelmed situation is, well, there's all kinds of resources for you. And what they feel like, hearing that is almost like worse than nothing, because it feels like, good, so now I feel guilty for not knowing what the resources are that are available to me. And what I say to congregations all over the state, but I will say to y'all very particularly, is legislators are just people. They don't know what they don't know. If they haven't been told, then there's not a way for them to know it. And if your congregation is serving people, and that means providing food, clothing, shelter, those kinds of things. It also means if you have a recovery program that meets in your building, if you're doing a dementia support group, if you're doing ESL on Tuesday mornings for some group of people, if you have campus ministries, if you are whatever the thing is where you're meeting any sort of human need, whether it's, food, clothing, and shelter, or psychosocial, or whatever, your legislator needs to know that that's true. In addition to the example that we've given you, there's also just the fact that legislators get calls every day. When I worked for a statewide elected official, I had a guy who for several months, I was in a lively correspondence with this man from Quanah, Texas, which I had not previously known existed, writing to me on steno paper in his handwriting, asking for help. And eventually it finally became evident that what he wanted was help getting a box air conditioner in his supported housing unit. But in the process, I learned that he was a Vietnam vet, and his wife had mental illness and all these other things. And my ultimate way that I handled the whole situation was to get directly with the Samaritan Center in Quanah, Texas, and say, you guys, there is a guy in your town who needs help. And they helped him. And they called me back and they said, okay, it's fixed. But legislators, elected officials don't know they didn't know, they wouldn't have, who knew there was a Samaritan Center in Quanah, Texas who could do this thing? So when you wonder why is it not working, one option is call the legislative office and say, I wanted to give you a tour. We want to make sure you know what we're doing. We want to make sure that you are aware that we're a congregation, and, better yet, we'd like to have a breakfast with representatives from 10 of our congregations in this district who want to collectively lay a bunch of knowledge on you. But the people who will be immediately interested are people who are called district liaisons, who are the people who get those calls. The person who calls the legislator and says, my mama can't get her SSI, the district liaison, the constituent service person, is the person who helps them. That person, if they knew that your congregation had someone who was able to help whatever the need was, they would bless you, I promise you. Can I share really quickly this one thing? I pulled it up because I love this so much. So this is, and God knows what else is going to be on my screen when I pull it up, but we'll just hope for the best. So it's on the American Presidency Project. It's a letter that Franklin Roosevelt wrote to the clergy of America. And what he says, you can read it, it's not super long, but he says, I shall deem it a favor if you will write to me about conditions in your community. Tell me where you feel government could be serving people better. And he says, I'm sure you see the problems of your people with wise and sympathetic understanding. And here because I've just sort of dropped this on you and now I'm going to stop sharing it. I'm putting it in the chat so you can get back and find it. That is just as true today as it was in 1935. elected officials would say the exact same thing, every one of them.
Would you mind sharing with folks in chat your email or the main email there at Texas
Sure.
Impact? In case and the folks who you've met with in terms of interest in San Antonio, who are those folks? We might know them. I want to connect with them.
Wait, say that again. I'm typing.
Who are the folks that you have met with in terms of
the
impact?
San Antonio? Yes.
Yeah.
I will get you that list.
Okay, great. I'm certain we know some of them on the list.
Well, I'm confident you do. And Rebecca Flores, who probably all of you know, is
We know Rebecca. Yep.
ringleader, of course. And you all are so fortunate in San Antonio. You have amazing faith leaders across the traditions and woven into the community. San Antonio is in a unique position, and I'm grateful to be working with you, and I'm always so grateful to have a chance to be in Helmke's orbit. So just y'all.
Yeah, but we've got such strong roots too. When you think about, farm workers.
Yep.
I mean, dare I say, that's further back there than some of us like to admit, right? But we've got roots with that and the Cops Metro and
Yep.
It goes back. We've got, during civil rights movement, we didn't have riots in San Antonio because the faith leaders were meeting. They were meeting at those lunchrooms and having meals together and saying, we do this already.
That just to build on that for 1 second, there is real concern across the state of Texas about what is going to happen after this election. There's a lot. Anne was mentioning that we had done this thing about when we wake up on Wednesday. She's going to keep doing that. That's amazing. There is real fear. We had a briefing yesterday with people who are doing message training around post-election that several of we had bishops from 2 or 3 different denominations and Sally Watson from the Presbyterian, all of them struggling to get their hands around what is going to happen when the election is over and how can we best be a source of calm is not even the right word, but civility. I mean, how are we going to move our communities forward, understanding that after every election, a bunch of people aren't completely happy with the outcome, and we will figure out a way to do it, but not if everybody's just going to start hitting each other and calling names, which feels like it is a possibility in our state and some other states. San Antonio is uniquely not on the list of places that's the most likely to happen. San Antonio, I think, sits as a little bit of an oasis of here the faith communities do seem to have robust relationships and are able to work together. And so treasure that and also model for the rest of the state what it looks like when we don't just immediately devolve into riots and polarization.
Well, it's 8:44, and I always promise folks that compassionate respect that we will end by then. And it's 8:45, it's a click. But thank you, B, for everything. We've got connections and possibilities that are happening out of this. I can feel it. And I've already connected you and Bill on a text. So
all right, good.
Have fun with that. Fasten your seatbelt. And I mean, you're both just amazing. So it's bound to be just wonderful. So thank you all for being here this morning, for who you are in this world and what you gift into it. And holding each other in prayer at this time and always, but in this time is definitely a compassion act. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next week, hopefully, when we start our mini series on the environment in San Antonio. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Bye, y'all.
Bye, B.